What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with Outpost, and when I saw this article today, I knew I kind of had to talk about it. Actually, I had a couple people tag me in it after I'd already seen the article, but thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. The heads up on Twitter is really appreciated. But Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Lucasfilm was originally resistant to the idea, and here's why. And as I was reading this, it just reminded me of how much I miss Lucasarts and how Star Wars used to handle video games and how much different it is now that Disney is in charge. And we'll get into all that, but let's look at this first. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was released in November to mostly positive reviews and strong sales numbers, but the game's success was not always a sure thing. Game director Stig Asmussen said in a new interview that Lucasfilm, which controls the Star Wars franchise, was originally resistant to his pitch for the game. In early meetings, the Lucasfilm team suggested that Respawn go in a different direction and make a game using blasters instead of lightsabers. The reason being was that Lucasfilm was very protective of Jedi in particular, he said. They weren't super comfortable with the idea of his initial pitch for a melee-focused action game. I pitched, hey, what if we make a game about a Jedi and Force powers? And they were not super comfortable with that. They threw it back and said, what about blasters and bounty hunters? That's not the background of the team we've built. You might as well ask me and us to start building a racing game at this point. I don't think anybody's going to be happy with the results of that. What I came to learn from them, Jedi is the holy grail. To make a game about Jedi, you got to earn it. There was a bit of back and forth, but they could see where I was coming from. Now, I do understand that to a point, but they're not hesitant to do it. That's the reason that Jedi would be off limits for me is because of the era where you set it in. I've played Jedi Fallen Order. Full disclosure, I haven't played it all the way through. It's lacking a little bit of story for me. I wish there was a little more story involved between the missions, but a lot of people really enjoy it. I do really like the gameplay, and as far as games from Disney-owned Lucasfilm, it's really solid. I really enjoy it. But you have, again, this problem of another time where it's set in between another survivor of the Jedi Purge. It's like, how many of these people are you going to cram into this era that actually happened to survive and tell that story? It just gets a little old and a little stale. So I hear where maybe some of their resistance could have been. However, you said, why not a game with blasters and bounty hunters? You canceled a perfect game. You canceled Star Wars 1313, which is going to be incredible. And now you want to come back and do that again. It's not surprising that you've changed your mind with the lack of leadership there at Lucasfilm. But let's continue on. Later in the interview, Asmussen mentioned that Respawn and Lucasfilm had numerous fights about creative decisions regarding Jedi Fallen Order. He said he understands Lucasfilm's position being the rights owner of a Star Wars series. He also recalled that Lucasfilm came back to him with a hard no on several different ideas. He said his team at Respawn became frustrated at times, but again, he said he understood that Lucasfilm had the final say. He said Lucasfilm was ultimately agreeable to the idea of Respawn making a game with a character who can use the Force but is not a Jedi, and that's what the team ended up making. The game's main character, Cal Kestis, is a Force user who becomes a Jedi in the course of the game. And I don't know why they'd be so hesitant to making him an actual Jedi. It's not like they care about continuity. It's not like Lucasfilm gives two shits about continuity and canon. They switch it every time a movie comes out, every time a new comic book comes out. They have to shift their gears and figure out how they're going to explain this one. How are they going to explain this away? So it is strange that they did that at the Resistance. But it reminded me of what it was like before. All these games that we had in development from Lucasarts before. Like I said at the beginning, not all of them were perfect games or anything, but there were so many really good games coming out all the time because they weren't afraid. And it was all connected. It was all this cohesive story that all tied into the Star Wars expanded universe. Imagine that. Imagine that, actually telling a story. But you see, a lot of the LucasArts games initially weren't even Star Wars games. It was some of their other properties, really until Super Star Wars and the Star Wars X-Wing games. Now, if you haven't played the X-Wing games on PC, they are really dated. They came out in the mid-90s, but they're still a ton of fun. A great flight simulator that really got me into it. And it's kind of based off, if you enjoy the Rogue Squadron X-Wing book series, you'll really enjoy those video games because a lot of the mechanics and how you play and how your shields work and how you can link your lasers. It all lines up. And then you had a couple things. You had a lot of things for the Super Nintendo. Then you had where I want to find it so bad. You obviously had Dark Forces 2. Where is the one I'm really looking for? Star Wars Rogue Squadron. I think that's the first one for the 64, maybe. God, I freaking love that so much. I loved Star Wars Rogue Squadron. It's a great game. And you look at that, that came out in 98. So did X-Wing Alliance. Phantom Menace comes out the next year. You have these racing games. But then you get into the early 2000s. You have Star Wars Starfighter. You have another Rogue Squadron game. You have Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. You have Bounty Hunter. Oh my gosh, Bounty Hunter is one of my favorite games of all time. I've actually been doing a playthrough, kind of on pause right now, but God, I love that game. You had Knights of the Old Republic. You had KOTOR. You had Jedi Academy. So Jedi Knight 3, effectively. These are all within a couple years of each other. Then you have Star Wars Battlefront in 2004. You have KOTOR 2 in 2004. The Revenge of the Sith video game. So much stuff, right? One after another. Battlefront 2, Empire at War. And then you had a little bit of a break in the late 2000s to get ready for SWTOR, which was a huge project that is still going on now. It's still producing expanded universe content. Not a lot of people talk about that, but it does not tie in to the Disney movies. It's a separate license. When that license runs out, we'll see what happens. But here's that Star Wars 1313 that I was talking about. You're supposed to play as a young Boba Fett. Oh my gosh, that would have been wonderful. But, Disney came in, bought everything, destroyed LucasArts, canceled it, and now we are where we are today. But, reading that just made me think of all the mistakes along the way and how they're so hesitant to do anything. And how they even fought with Respawn. I wonder how much better this game could have been, Jedi Fallen Order, if they'd actually let Respawn do what they wanted to do instead of this strict control over what they were allowed to do and what they weren't. And I wonder how involved the story group was. That's the other thing. With these other video games, the story group for Lucasfilm was so heavily involved in the crafting of this tale and making sure that everything worked with everything else. This one, maybe that's why they didn't want him to be a Jedi, so they wouldn't have to do that, so they wouldn't have to worry about that so much, about any of the continuity repercussions. But again, this is Disney Lucasfilm, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise that they almost screwed it up. They almost ruined the best game that they've had come out because of their tinkering. But I guess let me know what you think in the comments below. This was kind of more an excuse to talk about all the LucasArts games that I love and that I still play, that I enjoy way more than the current batch of Star Wars games. Now, Battlefront 2, the new Battlefront 2, I've actually played a little bit of recently. It's way better than it was before. But still, when you look at everything that came before it, you gotta say that you're disappointed with what's happened since Disney bought Star Wars. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.